Hello? So we're going to talk about a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. And now that's false. Okay, so it's false in one sense and true in another. From a scientific bomb calorimeter standpoint, meaning that in a place where you can actually get all of the nutrients you can out of a particular food, whether that be a peanut or an almond or a dairy product or what have you. That's true. In a laboratory setting, very true. Calorie is a calorie is a calorie, flat out. Now, some things to consider is that, those 4 calories per gram for protein, 4 calories per gram for sugar, and 9 calories per gram of fat is actually, those are just generalizations. That's actually not 100% true. There are some moderate fluctuations, and for you bodybuilders, you might be irate and very concerned about this, considering your really strict diet of, meeting to the absolute tenth of a gram. And these are some things that change. The fatty acid chain of your fat molecule is going to be larger or shorter, and that's going to affect its density, and it's going to affect its calories per gram. And so these are some things just to consider when you're tracking to the hundredth of a milligram of fat and protein and things. So the other thing that we need to consider here is that there are elements that allow you to absorb more calories out of a particular food, and there's also things within the food that change your own body composition to increase and metabolism to increase caloric expenditure. Okay, so it has actually been recently published that almonds are suggested to have around, I think it's 20 to 30% less fat per serving, because the fiber content and food matrix actually doesn't allow for the complete absorption of the fat. And this is a huge hubbub in the food industry, because we're saying, so now we have to think about absorption of the particular nutrient in order to consider posting on, your, let's say your pistachio label or what have you. Particularly, it's more so almonds. But so we're saying that, okay, we have 90 calories or 100 calories on our almonds, but 30% of that is now not digestible, so it's now called 70 grams, even though there may be 100 calories roughly in that container, if you were to use a bomb calorimeter. So that's a huge issue, is that now we have to change. They're suggesting that we change labels based on its digestibility, and that's going to be a huge issue, because then you have to look at the digestibility of a bunch of different humans, and that can vary among person to person. So that really isn't a great method of trying to decipher the caloric content of a nut, or anything else for that matter. The baseline that we have now is the most fundamentally sound, because it doesn't have much variation, though it certainly isn't perfect. So the other thing you have to consider is that there are, like I said before, some things that can influence absorption. So this is a concern with dairy, because calcium has been strongly correlated with the inability to absorb fat. So, and as we know, calcium content is really high in dairy, and in people who consume dairy, you can actually have less than, or a absorption rate that is much less than, or I should say, less than the absorption rate of, say, olive oil. So this is a huge issue now, again, because we're saying that, okay, we're consuming all this saturated fat in our dairy, but it has calcium, So then that's just going right through us and making us poop it out, and now we're pooping out maybe 100, 800 calorie, or sorry, not 800, 100 or 200, 300 calories through excretion because of this calcium aspect. It's like, oh, son of a bitch. Now we have calcium being an issue as far as absorption of fat, and we also have the food matrix and fiber content of almonds being an issue for that's fat absorption. So we know absorption's an issue. Okay, so let's say absorption's an issue as far as an isocaloric diet is concerned, and making sure calories in versus calories out. So the other aspect is that certain foods actually give you a higher disposition to assimilate muscle tissue. Now, I can't say that if it has a lot of magnesium and zinc in it, it's going to make you generate more muscle tissue. However, what if it had testosterone in it? Dairy products. So this is the thing with dairy products, is that they actually have a level of testosterone in them that can promote lean body mass growth. There's one study that showed I believe it was a 2 or 3 kilogram loss in fat mass in a 2 to 3 kilogram replacement of that fat loss with muscle. Lean body mass went up, fat mass went down. So, in an isocaloric diet. So these people aren't eating these people aren't eating a different calorie value as far as their food label is concerned. However, they're experiencing different caloric expenditures and absorption rates based on the food matrix. So this is the aspect that we don't consider when we say a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. Because you take a tablespoon of sugar and you're going to absorb that pretty regularly. However, you take a tablespoon of yogurt and you may not necessarily absorb all of that sugar, possibly. Although sugar is pretty regularly absorbed, so I would argue that it wouldn't have much of an effect. Yogurt's a pretty bad example as well. But I think you're starting to understand that this calorie is a calorie is a calorie is only applicable in a laboratory setting and not in a setting such as our human bodies. Okay, thank you very much, and hope you subscribe and rate with the thumbs up. These suck. These aren't cool. Don't do these. Yeah.